What is going on, guys? And welcome to the Wednesday night live stream. Today I have Mr. Nick Chan. How you doing, buddy?
Hey, I'm good. How's everybody?
Excellent, excellent. In the chat, COVID free, COVID-19 free for everyone. There you go. Avoid sick people. Stay
Yeah.
home. Spend some quality time with your aquarium. Give it some love, and come up with some crazy new designs, which is kind of tonight's topic of kind of pushing the design to the limit and kind of coming up with different stuff. Like if you saw the kind of funky one on the thumbnail, that was one that actually Nick designed, right, Nick?
Oh, the one in the middle. Yeah, just
Yeah.
noticed it. So the upside down drop-off cylinder tank.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the design for it. We prototyped it, but we haven't had the final one done yet. So yeah, I'm looking really forward to getting that actually. I think it's going to be really interesting. And I got a very notable freshwater aquascaper who's going to play with that and scape it out. So that's going to be really interesting too. So yeah.
Oh, that'd be pretty cool. So, what one thing that kind of brought this on, well, you always come with crazy to design, so I mean, it's perfect for the topic. I just posted a video on Monday about my buddy's tank that we kind of floated off of the wall. I mean, it's not really floating, there's little brackets underneath it. But when I first posted an Instagram photo like a couple months ago, it was like 50-50. It's either like, that's amazing, that is awesome, or it's going to crash and burn. Like, it was like 50-50. And it made me realize how many people are kind of like afraid to push the limits with some of this stuff and think outside the box and kind of come up with these kind of crazy designs that be different and make your tank really stand out. So yeah, it's kind of cool. I like finding weird different designs or stuff that's not common, stuff you don't see every day.
Yeah, exactly, Devin. That's the challenge I've always had because I'm one of those people that like to push the boundaries a little bit on design, and I love,
Mm-hmm.
like I sent you a load of images earlier on just weird and wacky aquarium stuff, and some of them are really cool as well, like really nice, but you
Mm-hmm.
just don't get to see them because people tend to just order what they see. And if
Mm-hmm.
you present them with something that's different, they kind of look for flaws. They go, yeah, but what if, what if, what if, what if? Because they haven't seen it operating already to know that it's trusted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And even as a designer, as an aquarium like designer, manufacturer, and all of that, I know like the boundaries which we have to, the frame we have to work within, the rules, and
Mm-hmm.
of glass thickness tolerances and weight distribution, integral strength for the cabinetry, and all of that. So within the designs, that's always employed.
Yeah.
So although it can be different, doesn't necessarily mean it's a risk, you know.
No, it's true, right?
So
Like as long as
yeah,
you
so
have
it's
the
overcoming that nervousness sometimes with people like being the guinea pig, if you like.
That's true. Like, I mean, silicone is amazingly strong. Like, it is a bugger to get off.
Mm.
Like, it does seal well, and as long as your glass has the proper thickness to the depth of it, I mean, for the most part, you're pretty safe to play within it. I don't know how it works for like weird bottom side angles and stuff, but in general, I mean, it's pretty good.
Yeah, I mean, if you're doing, it's like there's a difference as well in some tanks that can be made out of glass and some that kind of need to be made out of acrylic because of the different way the materials work and stuff like that. And like you say about the silicon as well, there's different types of silicon with different bonding strengths, different integrity to it.
Mm-hmm.
So as well as obviously making sure that your silicon's reef safe,
Yeah.
it's a good idea of knowing the silicon bonding strengths and things like that as well to know what the limits are on it. I
So,
mean, I know I made a comment about your friend's floating tank that to me
mm-hmm.
it looks like there was no silicon
Mm-hmm.
between the panes, which is beautiful, which is like the holy grail of tanks to have that
Mm-hmm.
invisible seamless finish. But the only problem practically we have is that there has to be a minimum amount of silicon, otherwise they can unzip under certain
Mm-hmm.
pressures. So to get a very glass on glass look, then you're looking at what thickness of glass are you using and also the water pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And like we discussed, not only the weight of the water pressure, so if you just fill your tank up with water and it's still
Mm-hmm.
and the pressure is exerting on the glass, but because we're reef keepers, we also have an extra pressure of the movement of the water,
Mm-hmm.
as we're pushing it around the tank, that momentum and generating that force that's then hitting the panes.
Now,
So the silicon forms an absorbency to that energy as well.
mm-hmm. Now, how much? Actually, that's a good question. Actually, like, how much force does having a power head pulsing across the edge of a tank have? Like, I know it's a decent amount, but is it something that a lot of people need to take in consideration, or are most standard tanks, fairly built for it?
Well, this is another thing because I have seen like, and I know of occurrences, and I mean, guys can search for these if they want. But if
Mm-hmm.
you look at what we used to do, we used to basically take freshwater tanks and then convert them into marine tanks. So some of the tropical tanks and fresh and like goldfish tanks, if you like, were designed for still pretty much still water with
Mm-hmm.
a small amount of flow, and then we were exerting high amounts of flow. So in the early days, we did see a lot of unzipping of stock off the shelf tanks that weren't
Yeah.
designed as marine tanks.
Mm.
And that's why a lot of the custom builders came into play, where it was seen as sort of like, I don't know, level one was buying a standard smallish tank and breaking breaking your teeth into the hobby. And then once you progressed and you knew what you're doing, you'd upgrade to a custom built tank, because then you'd be looking at a larger size tank, 4 foot, 5 foot, 6 foot, and
Mm-hmm.
so on. So then it was like, oh, now you want to go custom, because those guys will know how to build a solid reef tank for you that's designed to be a reef tank.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we did see in the early days, years ago, a lot of unzipping, and unfortunately, still occasionally do now. If
Really? Oof.
manufacturers, yeah, I mean, I do insurance reports for insurance companies every now and again, and I've been out to unfortunately tanks that have unzipped due to several reasons. Sometimes there's oils on the seams that haven't been cleaned properly with chemicals before the silicon's applied, so it hasn't gripped properly. Sometimes, again, not enough silicon, or
Yep.
the silicon used isn't of the right bonding strengths
So, okay,
for the
I've
weight,
never,
the pressures.
no, I've never considered bonding strength of silicone before. Like, I would assume that 100% silicone is all the same. So, is there a difference between one to another?
I
Like,
believe so. I mean, I don't
mm-hmm.
personally build tanks myself,
Mm-hmm.
so I always use subcontracted for tank building.
Yeah.
But when I have looked at silicon before, there's different, like one of the tank builders I know in the UK that builds really nice tanks down in London. They use a two-part silicon, so it's two tubes in a gun, so it mixes together. And then other companies use different makes of silicon.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not always, like silicon is silicon is silicon.
Okay.
As the actual like ingredients and composition, to be honest, I don't have that information, but
Mm-hmm.
I know there is different ingredients and stuff that forms the silicon. So
Okay, that's good to know. Now as far as like tank safe silicone, if you are repairing or building your own tank, my general rule of thumb has just been always use 100% silicone, right? Like, because I know some of them have like anti molds and fungals and weird things for kitchens and baths, but 100% pure silicone, nothing else in it. You should
hmm
be fairly safe. Just kind of a general rule. Because
yeah.
I have seen people build their own tanks before. I've thought about it. I mean, it does some baffles, but that's what it. So interesting. So when it comes to crazy design, so like the one that I saw, like I saw your prototype one. I actually got a photo of it here. The dual split half cylinder drop off funky one. So
Right, yeah.
that's when you're saying you got someone's gonna escape it, like a fancy planted one. I don't know if you can
Yeah, I've
see the
got.
YouTube, but
I reached out. I'm on LinkedIn,
mm-hmm,
so I reached out to a high-profile scaper on there,
mm-hmm,
and said, "Hey, do you fancy like having a go at one of the concept, a concept design?" And they said, "Oh, send me through a picture of it." And I sent it through, and they were like, "Yeah, I'm all over that. I want to do that. That'd be awesome."
nice.
So yeah, I really like doing stuff that's different, just to get people's imagination going, and just showing that. Because a lot of the time, like you hear people say, "I'd love to get a bigger tank." Always like a bigger tank, because big tanks are impressive, but you can achieve a lot in a smaller tank as well. And one of the ways you can achieve a very like stunning look is through the actual, form of the aquarium design itself, or
Mm-hmm,
the cabinet design, or and so on. I mean, there's so much we can do with a small tank in terms of scaping and the type of corals and fish and
mm-hmm,
inverts and things you have. But even just a different design of form of the tank, can be really interesting. I know, Innovative Marine. I was speaking to Steve, one of the Steves that owns Innovative Marine. I was saying to
Yeah.
them, you know, you guys, like, you build your own tanks. It'd be really nice to see like something a little bit different. And then they formed the I can't remember what they
Oh,
called
the
it
drop
now.
off one.
Yeah, they had a name for them. I can't remember if it was Concepts or something like that.
The
Range, and they had the round
Fusion.
ones and the drop offs and stuff. Yeah,
Fusion. I've had like 3 of them now. So yeah.
yeah. And that I really like the fact that they did that. You know,
Hmm.
just to have a play.
Hmm.
Um, I mean, we had. I mean, I know I sent a picture of the
Or Nuvo. There we go.
Fluval
It's
Edge,
the
the Fluval Edge,
yeah.
and that for me was such an iconic aquarium design. I loved it. It was self-contained, so you filled the tank all the way up to the top, so there was no water line, and the tank itself looked like it was floating.
Hmm.
And that's probably one of my all-time favorite designs for a tank. It was like a beautiful design.
That was
Um,
actually one of the tanks that sucked me back into the hobby. When I was young,
really,
when I was younger, I had tanks and had tons of different tanks. Well, not tons, but I had a bunch of like the standard issue tanks, right? Everyone has with like the gravel and blah blah blah. And then eventually, I was sit there, and my wife now, before the time, I was like, "Oh yeah, can I think about a tank again?" She's like, "Oh, I have one." And then I think it was one of those little 6 gallon Fluval Edge ones. I'm like, "Oh, it's a sweet tank," and I turned that into like a little planted fresh tank, and then eventually I upgrade to the 12 gallon version, and then that was
right?
hardcore and planted tanks, and eventually I turned the 12 gallon version into my first reef tank, and then that's so kind of put me back down the hole, this rabbit hole of reef tanks. That all started with the
I'll
Fluval
start with a
Edge.
little Fluval Edge.
Yep, sucked me
The
back
thing
in.
is, I noticed recently though that it's kind of gone the other way because when we had the flu a long time ago, we had a company called Wave, and they did the tank, an original tank where it had the curved front, and
Mm-hmm.
then it kind of disappeared, and then Fluval launched it,
Mm-hmm.
the same sort of tank again with the curved front, and
Yep.
everybody was like, "Oh wow, have you seen this tank? It's amazing!" And I was thinking, well, that tank was around about 10 years before, and it kind of didn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's quite interesting seeing the same tank relaunched by another company and then do really, really well.
Had one of those too.
Um,
Fluval Saka.
yeah, and then recently I've noticed there doesn't seem to be anything that's slightly different. Kind of, you know, in the hobby in general, when you see people's tanks, they're
Mm-hmm.
all cubes and rectangles again, and it's just now again, I guess, with your friend's floating tank.
Mm-hmm.
Now people seem to be interested again into like, oh, let me do something different with the tank. So it's
Yep.
really interesting for me, like just watching it go around in circles where you get interesting designs of tanks, then it kind
Mm-hmm.
of just goes back to cubes and rectangles. And then after a while, it's like, oh, I'm bored of this. Let's try to do something with the tank again.
Well,
So,
that's true
yeah,
though. Like it's kind of like trends, right? Like even like, fashion styles, it's like every like 20, 30 years they just like rotate. They're like, I run out of ideas, come back and recycle the old ones and tweak it and freshen it up, and it seems to be the way of people. But
yeah. I mean, I know a common question I get asked is, but Nick, you know, at the end of the day, it's a square glass box and a square wooden box that it's sat on. So what can you do that's different?
mhm.
And I just like sometimes I'm just stood there and I'm thinking, God, there's so much like goes craziness in my head that can be done.
Yeah.
But the shame of it is like you were saying to me before, like Nick, send me some pictures of stuff you've designed and stuff you've
Mhm.
actually made that's wacky. And the
Yeah.
problem is, like I said earlier, is that I must have 20 different tank and cabinet designs in my head that I've not even put down on paper.
Mhm.
But that's all well and good. But people want to order what they generally know or they
Mhm.
see. You might get the odd customer that says, no, I want something different to what everyone else has got. And that's great because then I can really kind of let loose.
Mhm.
But it doesn't happen as often as I'd like it to because I think there's probably a lot of people like myself who could probably come up with some amazing ideas and designs,
Mhm.
and it'd be really nice to see, you know, what could be achieved with that if we're able to do it. I mean, hopefully, I mean, I've been working hard and I've got a lot more work to do here because down at my unit still, and I'm making this into a studio still.
Nice.
So what that'll enable me to do is have a studio area, gallery area, where I can actually have some of these concept ideas made,
It
and
should
people
be
when they
full of
visit will be able
concept
to see
tanks.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That'd be awesome.
So, so then I'm hoping that when people do come and see it in the flesh and they
Mhm.
see it working, that they'll go, oh wow, that looks really cool, I want that.
Hmm.
Now I've seen it, I want it. That's what
Yeah.
I'm hoping. So, oh my god, I've got ideas for rainbow tanks, and honestly, there's all kinds of things. So that'll be
Hmm.
fun. That'll be really fun to do.
There's I know one that's always seems to be really popular at show like Reef of Paloozas and stuff. Like Oreo usually has one of those cylinder overflow zero edge style tanks. Like that one's always super popular. People are always like, oh, what's that like?
Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, that's another one. Again, you're mentioning like really quite iconic tanks, because I remember seeing the first one of those, and I was just like, oh wow, that's such a cool idea. You know,
Hmm.
such a cool concept. It's difficult for us to get them over in the UK,
Hmm.
because I've actually talked to the company, because when I set up the store here, that's the kind of stuff I want to do, the stuff that's a little bit
Hmm.
away from the norm.
Yep.
So there'll be somewhere for people to visit where they can see different stuff. I'm not trying to like push the store, by the way, but that's the way I am in terms of
Hmm.
like, I like the new stuff, and I like stuff that's a little bit away from normal, you know, just to get people's imagination and,
Hmm.
you know, energy going.
No, exactly. Well, I mean, I guess it's just probably not cheap to get a massive circle of cylinder, but acrylic. But yeah, it would be pretty cool to do. I mean,
Yeah.
a square wouldn't be easy to do, relatively. You just knock one of those up yourself pretty
Yeah.
easy. But
Yeah, I mean that's the problem. Some of the designs do lend themselves to certain materials because of the design,
hmm.
unfortunately, and that's true with cabinet design as well as tank design.
Hmm.
But I always think of it this way: like if you've got something that's quite unique, and obviously what we do, it's not mass produced.
Hmm.
So sometimes it's like, is it worth that money? Because you've got some. I mean, I've done tanks before. One of the first small drop-off tanks I did for a guy down in London, and that was a really strange one because he started off exactly the same way. I was like, he always had 2 foot cubes. That's all he
Hmm.
could fit in the space that he kept his aquarium. So every now and again, he'd buy another 2 foot cube.
Hmm.
And I said to him, I said, but you always buy 2 foot cubes. I said, what are you going to do different with this tank? And it was like, oh, I'm going to have to think how I can scape it different. And I might keep different fish, different corals, and so on.
Hmm.
And I said, why don't you do a drop off tank? And he goes, I don't know what you're talking about. So I sent him the design for a small cube with a small step down.
Yeah.
And the first thing he said was, but I'm going to lose water volume, because there's obvious. It's like, I need more water volume. How much water volume does my tank hold? Like, if I can just squeeze another 100 liters or another 10 gallons into my tank, I'll be so much happier, right?
Nice.
So his first concern was, well, I'm going to lose water volume. And I said, yeah, you will, but
It'd be cool.
who have you seen with one of these? And then he said, and then how am I going to escape it, because it's got this step down, so I'm gonna have to escape it. And then what about the flow? Like, how am I going to get the flow to be correct at this on the step down and all of this? And I said, there you go. Now the tank itself is challenging you as a reef keeper. You
Hmm.
know, now the tank is challenging you. So imagine, like, doesn't that make you excited that you're having to think, like, how am I going to do this and how am I going to do that? So you're going to
Hmm.
enhance your skills as a reef keeper because you're having to overcome these obstacles. And you could see in his face, he was just like, yeah, and I'm gonna have to. How would I do that? How would I do that? And then all of a sudden, he loved it. The bomb dropped, and or the penny dropped, and he absolutely loved the idea then. And then I remember this was before a lot of us were on Facebook, and we're on one of the UK forums, and he put pictures up of the tank, the designs I
Hmm.
sent him. He posted those up, and again, the first thing people pointed out with the design was, but hey, you're going to lose water volume.
Oh, that's
and
funny.
then and then what he did was, he he got the design, and then he used a graphics program, and he basically drew on the rockscape that he had the idea for.
Hmm.
And then as soon as he did that, people went, oh wow, that looks really cool. Oh, this is going to be epic. And it
That's
went
funny, eh?
completely the other way. So to start with, the first, I don't know, 10, 20 posts were like, oh, you're going to lose water volume, and how are you going to do this, and how are you going to do your flow, and it's going to be a disaster. And then as soon as he laid escape onto it and people could picture it, they
Hmm.
went, oh my God, this is going to be awesome. You
Yeah.
know? And it was probably the most photographed, talked about, published in magazines tank at that time when he got it. And I mean, the
Hmm.
guy was great at what he did, and he had some amazing corals in there. He put a deep sand bed in the drop off and got a blue spot goby, so quite an expensive fish.
Yeah.
You know, and it lived down in the sand bed and drop off. So, you know, that was a great idea. Did a really nice scape with some ceramic stuff. Wolfgang at Riff System custom made the scape to go over the step.
Nice.
So that was really good. Oh, was it? No, it wasn't Riff System. It was Caroline Veltz, I think it's called. So yeah, my mistakes on that. But yeah, once he got it wet and he got his corals in and they started to grow out and it started looking like a reef. Yeah, honestly, it was sensational, and he got a lot of attention for that. And
nice.
And again,
because it's different.
Only 2 foot. It was only 2 foot by 2 foot. It was a small tank, but like you say, it was different, and he had to overcome challenges with it and overcome obstacles with it, which he did, and it grew it out, and it looked amazing. You know, and it's only a 2 foot cube.
well, that's the thing, though, right? I mean, there's two aspects. One, a 2 foot cube is obtainable for most people, right? So most people, it's the thought that, yes, exactly. I could have that. And the other part of it is it's something different, right? It's something unique that you don't see every day. And that's what draws people into it. Like, even my buddy's tank, like, I posted 2 days ago, and it's like 9,000 views are on it. Like, it's crazy, but it's something different that you don't see every day. It's like pushing the, you know, the standard norm, which is what sucks people in and is cool. It just gives that extra awesomeness, is just because you're doing that.
And actually, what your friend's done, it's a pretty standard system if you think about it, because it's not the tank is a rectangle tank.
Yep.
Yeah. And he's got the I think he's got the eShore overflow.
Yep.
On that, so it's a nice minimal overflow box on that, and his sumps on the other side of the wall, right?
Yep.
But aside from that, it's piped up and everything as a regular tank.
Exactly.
So it's just slightly offset it, changed it, so you just see the tank and you know put the supports
overflow pipes, everything's in the wall.
Yeah, so it's very minimal looking and very sort of
took
floating.
the stand and got rid of it.
Yeah, but the complexity of it, other than the reinforcing of the wall and stuff that I saw you guys do to make sure it was all strong enough, aside from that, it's just a regular tank, right? So there's no complications in maintenance or cleaning or anything else. You just run it like a regular tank.
Exactly. It's all about the supports. One that I love that I've seen, it's in an apartment, and I always forget the guy's name, but I see it on Facebook, and it's like a couple 100-gallon tank, but there's steel beams going through the wall that are counterweighted, and there's just 2 little cables things on it, and it's a massive tank, and it's just like kind of floating above the ground on its little pedestal thing in the apartment. Actually, that's a super cool one. You've probably seen it. I forget what that one's called.
Yeah. I'd like to do a similar one here, to be fair, because I think with tank design, it's a tricky one, because there's certain designs. I know that I follow one that you put on the thumbnail with the white gloss one with the diagonal step down. When I saw that, oh my God, I was so jealous, because I was like, I wish I designed that. You know, that's one of the tanks where I looked at it and I thought, oh wow, that's such a great idea. I wish that had been mine. And so that I'll never make, because it's not mine. It's not my design. And it's such a unique design as well. I'd feel like I was robbing the company, if you like, if I made one, you know, unless they gave me permission, of course, which I've asked for from other tank builders before that have done unique designs. But with the floating one, I think that is slightly different, because it's a regular tank, but just mounted a different way. And one of the reasons why I would like to do one of those here is, again, so people can see it and then consider doing it. You know, and that's what I'd like to see is where people can actually see different ways that they can, you know, mount the systems or do things with the system, so it is different. But, you know, the presentation's different, but the maintenance and cleaning and the running of it is pretty much like any other tank.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to do one of those, I think.
Oh, that would be it. Oh, I think, did I find a photo of it? Yeah, I'll load it. The other one. Now, another cool thing that would be to do would, well, actually, one thing I've seen done, it's super simple, but for the tank stand, it was literally just like an X of glass. So you just had 2 sheets of glass and like an X pattern, and the whole tank was just sitting on it. Just super minimalistic. You barely noticed it.
There's a couple of companies I've seen. I think Amano, ADA, I think they launched a glass podium, I guess you could call it.
Hmm.
And I can't remember the design if that's the one that you're talking about, or whether it's another companies that you're talking about. But
Hmm.
again, it's hard. It's hard, Dev, sometimes because I can only say like as a designer, but I don't want that to sound like artsy farty
Yeah.
because I'm not that sort of a guy. But when you see other people's designs, when you're designing yourself, you can kind of
It
see
inspires you.
things, and it
Hmm.
inspires, but you can understand the design because you understand structural integrity of
Hmm.
triangulation and things like that. So I remember when I saw that podium, if you like, that you talk
Hmm.
about with the glass, I thought, oh yeah, that's really cool because what they're trying to achieve is that invisible look, that
Hmm.
very pure, simplistic, invisible, elegant look, but still maintain the integral strength.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's difficult to do,
Hmm.
because sometimes the tanks do get really heavy.
Oh yeah.
And we have to also, with reef systems especially, we have to consider not just the vertical load of the weight of the tank in the
The water
water,
push
but
movement.
also the lateral shift
Hmm.
with the wave makers and the movement of the water as well. So we have to consider vertical integral strength as well as a lateral pull, if you like.
Hmm.
So when we build and design cabinets, you can build a cabinet that laterally is strong,
Hmm.
but then doesn't deal with vertically is strong, but
Yeah,
doesn't deal with the lateral pull so well.
it's true.
So you end up having to put more components into the cabinet that then takes away the elegance of the cabinet. So it's that balance all the time of aesthetically it looks great, but
Hmm.
practically it's not going to work. Practically it works, but aesthetically, I wish I could simplify the
Yeah.
design.
Yeah,
So,
no, I know what you mean. Okay, I found a quick
yeah.
one of Ralph's Reef. I'm just gonna throw it up for a sec. That's where the whole one's kind of somewhat suspended, floating kind of look with the two cables. I don't know. I always like that one. That'd be cool to do something like that, but you'd need some hardcore reinforcements for that baby to work. But yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the other good thing as well is materials that can be used as well. So this last few years, I've started going outside of my comfort zone. We're utilizing different materials. So we're doing a lot more like aluminium frames and combination, like hybrid systems, combination of wood and aluminium or wood and steel
Hmm.
and things like that. And I've noticed one of the big distributors in the UK that gets their tanks made and cabinets made have incorporated a hybrid where they've got a wooden based cabinet with an aluminium profile to
Hmm.
deal with the lateral pull,
Yep.
and that actually looks really good because by doing that, it means over like say a 900 width, 900 mil, 90 centimeter width, you'd normally have to have a vertical support
Hmm.
in the cabinet for the natural drop. But because they've used the aluminium, it means they don't need that vertical support.
Oh,
So
not having center
that's a,
braces is amazing. It's just
yeah.
so nice,
So
full access,
exactly,
nothing in the way. Hmm.
exactly. So again, that's a good example of something we crave for, which is get rid of the central supports, but
Hmm.
in a way that's safe.
Hmm.
So how do we do that? So for a long time, it's you've got to have that vertical support because there's no way of not having it. And then by
Hmm.
using a hybrid system, we're using the aluminium. Well,
Hmm.
that material means that they don't need that central support. So now we've got a cabinet that meets the criterion both aesthetically but practically as well.
Yep.
So yeah, it's good to see things develop, and evolve.
No, exactly. So, what do you got? Any other kind of? So, what do you gonna do with your shop? You said you want to turn to more of a showroom, different unique tanks. You got any kind of crazy designs that you're percolating right now to build in there?
Yeah, I'd like one of the things I like to do here is really create an experience for people. So um, when I was over in the States, I visited ADG in Houston,
Mm-hmm.
and what I loved about Jeff's and Andrew Seski, what I loved about their place is when you walk through the door, it's basically like a gallery.
Mm-hmm.
Um, all the tanks escape beautifully. So predominantly fresh water. So all the tanks are beautifully escaped by Jeff,
Mm-hmm.
and it's. I mean, I'm a saltwater reefer, but I have done freshwater before. I've never done a full-on freshwater planted aquascapes sort of tank before. I've mainly done community tropical fish and things like that,
Yeah.
and cichlids and things. But when I see those tanks, that you can't you, the beauty of them, it just blows your mind.
Mm-hmm.
And what really stood out for me when I visited their store was the experience of that, was walking in and just wanting to visit each and every display, you know, and stand in front of them and just take it in, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And I really loved that about that place. And then to one side they have like a dry goods room where you can
Mm-hmm.
buy tanks and pumps and lights and so on. And then on the other side you go through to the back room, and it's quite a large area actually. And then they have coral bays, and then fish racks for salt water, and then beyond that is they have all the aquascaping media, wood and stuff, and then all the freshwater fish in fish racks again. And so I really like that way that they laid the store out, where you walked into this studio gallery
Mm-hmm.
and could be inspired, you know,
Yeah.
by what they were able to do with that. And then almost like, on here's where you buy all the bits to do
Well,
it,
that's
and
smart.
then here's why you buy all the plants and the
Yep.
fish and the coral to then put in it. So I really like that. It was
Mm-hmm.
like telling a story. You know, here's the story. Here's what you can achieve, and
Mm-hmm.
then here's how you do it. Here's the things you do it with. So I
Yep.
really like that.
Here's all your inspiration, then here's your tools.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I really like that, and also just the way the store was, the the furniture and fixtures of the actual store itself
Mm-hmm.
was like a gallery. You know, so you almost felt you were walking into a living gallery,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's a very strange feeling going into somewhere like that compared to like a general fish store where you've got lots of products on racks. You
Mm-hmm.
walk in and it's just shelving and products on racks, and then there's coral bays in front of you and fish racks in front of you. And I'm not sort of trying to take away from those stores either, because you know there's a lot of fantastic stores out there that are laid out that way. But it was just the experience, I think, of visiting the store and spending time there
Mm-hmm.
with Andrew and Jeff that really impressed me, and that's something I'd like to try and sort of do here,
Mm-hmm.
but like a saltwater version of that.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
definitely.
think I mean, I think any good store needs to have some really beautiful displays, right? Because that's what inspires people. And I know my last trip,
Yeah,
I was in Louisiana and I saw some amazing stores and like crazy displays. Like one of them, I went in and one of the rooms had this like big lagoon style tank with like mangroves growing to the roof, like just different things you don't normally see. Like there are some just really cool designs out there, and I don't know, I love seeing different things like that. Gets me excited to makes me want to build more
yeah.
tanks, but
I mean, I'll be honest. When I go into stores, there is good stores and there is, you know, what I class as not so good stores. And I think when a store's laid out really nicely, and the display tank is a nice display and you're drawn to it,
mm-hmm.
and it really kind of demonstrates what could be achieved. That's what I always think a display tank is for. That, you know, people walk up to and go, wow, this is what I would like in my house, or, you know, how
Mm-hmm.
do I achieve this, especially if you're like new to the hobby or fairly new to the hobby. And that's, like you said, your inspiration. And
Mm-hmm.
then sometimes you'll go to a store where, you know, it's all shelving and then they've got the token display, and it's
Mm-hmm.
kind of not very well maintained, or it's not very inspirational, and it's
Yep.
just, you know, piles of rocks and a few corals in there. And then I just look at that and I just think, kind of like, what a waste of an opportunity,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And you know, it's almost like the token display, you know. It's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, that's our display. You know, and it's like, why
Need that
bother,
showpiece,
you
right?
know? Yeah, and that's the thing, why bother? And I think for me, I've I'm a cabinet designer manufacturer, so how can I not have uh, like a studio gallery here
Mm-hmm.
to inspire people? Because that's basically what I should be doing. You
I
know,
agree.
I'm here to make systems look nice for people with amazing finishes and cabinetry.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got to demonstrate that myself in what we do. So if I just had rows of shops of shelving of products and just fish racks and coral bays,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't have an area to kind of demonstrate what you could achieve from us, then what would be the point, you know? So that's kind of why I'm thinking that way. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
hoping people that do come down when it's done and it's open
Mm-hmm.
will go away feeling that they've had an experience visiting, as well as, you know, picking up the pump or the fish or the coral that they've come to buy. I really want people to walk away just feeling better, having had I'd been here and I've got some kind of experience from it, other than, oh yeah, it's a nice shop and they have plenty of stock.
Yeah. No, it's
But
cool.
we'll see. We'll see if I manage to hit the target or not.
You will. I'm waiting to see how many like floating tanks I
Are
see
you
pop up
confident
in
in
the
me?
next 6 months just from sharing this one. I know you're gonna see more pop up now. Like people need to see it, and then they'll be like, "Oh, that's sweet. I want to build it." Right? Like it's just a way of
Yeah,
inspiring
definitely.
people.
Yeah, I've actually seen like a couple of things that I've looked at where it's not like floating on the wall,
Hmm.
but there's a way that the stand's been done
Hmm.
that gives you like it's like a metal, like supportless, and it's
Yep.
kind of like a U shape on its side. But the way
Oh,
they've done the design, the metal and the tubing and everything else, it's definitely strong enough to put a
yeah.
tank on it. But it looks like it shouldn't be,
Hmm.
and that's what I really want to do. So I've got
That
pictures and designs of that frame, and I've got a steel uh, manufacturer that said
nice.
he can make it for me. So that's one that I'm definitely going to put on display
That
because I
was
really love the fact it's
oh
like,
yeah.
an optical illusion. It's
That
like, how
I
is that stood up?
I
It shouldn't be.
I almost did that. I was very tempted to do
Right.
something like that with my peninsula. It was about 2/3
Mm,
of a stand, and the other third was floating, which is like a
yeah,
funky
exactly.
design. So it was inset and gave it like a really light, airy look. But
Yeah.
then I got impatient and I just used the stock stand.
But we've done it with rock design in
Hmm.
tanks. The scape. You've seen that the floating scapes where it
That's
comes
half my
across as a
tank.
big long shelf,
Yep,
and then
that's.
it's attached, and then there's a big foot underneath the sand that is a cantilever.
Hmm.
So we've done that in the rockscape. So I'd
Yep.
like to do that as a metal stand.
Hmm.
I'd really like to do that as something a little bit different. Yeah, for sure. That'd
Nope.
be an interesting one.
You should do it. I like it.
I'll tell you what was interesting, Dave, when I actually met with Andrew and Jeff, and I had my iPad with me, and we were talking about various things, and they were saying about cabinetry, and Jeff had a very interesting um, uh, his kind of like angle on things, the way he view things, because he was talking to me about hardware and software
Hmm.
of tanks. So he was saying that the hardware is your tank and your cabinet and all that, and your software is basically the internals, the plants, the rocks, the sand, and all that. And his sort of way of thinking is that I'm not bothered about the tank and the cabinet.
Hmm.
If I can just get the software right, it'll look amazing. Everyone will be inspired by this.
Hmm.
And as a cabinet designer, I'm kind of like, well, from my point of view, is the cabinet is part of the whole aesthetic.
Hmm.
The cabinet design and the look of the tank actually, uh,
100%.
it
Hmm.
benefits the display. You
Hmm.
know, um, so we had a bit of a discussion about that, and then opened my iPad and I showed them. I have a folder of pictures on my iPad, which is my inspirational things.
Hmm.
So there's just loads of random stuff in there. There'll be a picture of a vase or a chair,
Well,
like totally random stuff. But there's something about it that I
hmm.
like. Maybe the color contrast, maybe the shape, the design. There'll be something about those objects
Hmm.
that I love that I can then take with me and include it within a cabinet design. I know that sounds a bit weird, but
No, it
you
doesn't
know,
because I actually had
you
one,
you
and
understand what
mine was
you understand what I mean,
an island counter that inspired my floaty design that I wanted to build it, but I
right?
haven't yet. But one day I might. I'll see if
Right,
I.
because sometimes it's just textures of stuff, the way the textures and the shading, and then that kind of inspires me to look at different finishes and things like that. So I opened up my iPad and I opened up this album and I
Hmm.
showed them all of these objects and stuff and said, this is where I get my, helps me with inspiration.
Hmm.
And when they were looking at that, I was saying to Andrew, I said, so this, and I showed him that supportless frame. I said, so
Hmm.
that I think would look amazing with a tank on it and then a remote sump. So it just gives the illusion that it's just like, say, like semi-floating, but it's kind of like it shouldn't hold that weight, but it does,
Hmm.
And Andrew turned around and he said, well, any of these, Nick, he said, if you want to do them and then put them in our studio, you're more than welcome. And I was like, wow, really? And he was like, yeah, we love these. These look great. So
Nice.
that for me was like, I know I'm on the right track if guys of that ilk
Yep.
kind of go, yeah, you'd be welcome to put those in our studio. So yeah,
Make
that'd
make
be
it happen.
interesting. Well, yeah, and they were great guys, really accommodating, really nice guys, and I think he was
Mm,
pretty serious as well. He wasn't mocking me or anything, and with the aesthetics that I could see in the displays they had, stuff like that would really suit that
mm,
sort of elegant, natural, planted scape aesthetic as well. So
yeah,
yeah, it'd be interesting to do something like that.
nice.
So
Another
which of those, sorry, Dave, which of those designs did you like the most? Do you know the pictures I sent you?
that you sent me.
Which one really? Yeah, which of the ones did you really go? Oh wow, that's really cool.
Let me
Because
open
I
up.
know I sent you tons about what was it, about 30 pictures or something.
Yeah, I saved a good handful. Let me look through the ones that I downloaded. There's one actually where I kind of half planned about doing something similar. It was kind of like the version that's like a fluval edge, but a peninsula. I actually had a similar
Mm,
mock-up design a while back, which I debated building like my own small version of it. But it
right.
was, yeah, it gives that cool kind of floaty look when it looks like the stand's shorter than the tank, and then it has the little bar for the light over top. So
Oh yeah,
yeah,
that was the render or just the graphic,
yeah,
right? I
that's the
haven't
graph for
actually
that
built
one.
that one. Yeah, I remember there was a guy asked me to one of those guys that said, "Can you design me something that hasn't been done before?" And
Hmm.
that's why I came up with that one. It was inspired by the Fluval as well, you
Yeah.
know, because I thought it was such a great design, and I hadn't seen it done as a peninsula. So that's why I wanted to do that one. That's one of the ones I really wished it would have gone on to have been made and
Hmm.
delivered, that one.
Yeah.
But again, he ended up going for a regular rectangular tank.
Yep.
His wife stepped in and said, "No, I don't want. I want just something with white gloss." So that's what we ended up
Standard. That
making for him.
happens. Um,
Yeah,
completely different, but this one little picture of a little tank that has a little 3D printed design inside of it, just like the little fake rock things. I thought about trying
yeah,
something
that.
for like a reef with that, just for fun in a nano, just to completely 3D print your aquascape, and I don't know, be
I
funky.
don't know why you don't, Dev, because you've got your 3D printer and stuff. You know what? That'd look really good because
Mm-hmm.
you could basically, when you put your corals on there,
It would encrust it over
they'd be
time, and
basically, they would, but initially your corals would be almost like floating because it's like a net. It looks like a
mm-hmm.
net, quite an open pore net, right? The one that you're
Yep.
talking about. And it's kind of like a very milky white
Mm-hmm.
um, plastic, 3D plastic that they've used, right?
Yeah.
And that one I really liked. Did you see? Because he did a whole series, and I sent you a few of the series of different designs that he did, and
Mm-hmm.
some of them were really cool. There was one I couldn't find, which I wanted to show you, and I don't know if you've seen it. It's like it's almost like imagine like a goldfish bowl that's melted, and
Yep.
it looks like it's half hanging over a corner.
Yep. Those are cool.
Yeah, and I really like that one as well. So there's loads of stuff out there. To be fair, it's just looking for them.
No, exactly, and I've seen a lot of cool little ones too with the melted glass on wood, where it kind of forms around
Mm.
it. I see people use them as planters and stuff, but you could do something cool like that for like a small little reef tank. I mean, or a really
Yeah,
big one, but hmm
so I know people have. Was it Inappropriate Reefer that did
yep,
the jar aquarium, and
hmm
that I really enjoyed that when he did that as
yep,
well. And I mean, again, it's just being cautious to stock it with the right kind of animals that aren't going to suffer being in a that sort of a space. But
yeah, cool little
yeah,
sexy
I love
shrimpus
it
little
when people.
creatures.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing wrong with that, and yeah, I like it when people kind of go out of the framework a little bit and
Mhm.
try something different.
Just for fun, this was probably like 8 9 months ago now, but I did a big rock structure in virtual reality in 3D. I like 3D painted it and molded it, and I printed out a
Right.
mini version just like a proof of concept, which was kind of fun. It's probably kicking around here somewhere, but it'd be cool to fully do that. I don't know. It was cool just to be able to like blow it up and like walk around inside of like you're the fish, see what they would see for the structures, and it was kind of neat to do. So,
You should.
mm-hmm,
I mean, I don't know if there's not. I know with 3D printing, there's some like translucent
mm-hmm.
plastics you can get, but you can't. As far as I know, you can't get a transparent plastic yet, can you? For 3D
Nah,
printing,
it's translucent-ish. It's kind of like a frosty
translucent,
white.
yeah.
It's not
But can you
quite
imagine
clear.
if you could get a transparent one and you did your rock structure and then put your corals? It just looked like your corals are just sat on nothing.
Yeah, I know, right? It'd be cool.
That'd be
But
awesome. I mean, I like those Chinese. I think I've sent you pictures before of the Chinese. There's a Chinese tank I really like. and it's where they've got a very, very skeletal rockwork structure, and they've put all the SPS on it, and all the SPS has grown out, so you can't see the rock structure at all, and it just looks like the colonies are just floating in the air. I absolutely love that tank. So yeah, I'd really like to do one of those in the gallery as well. Love to do one.
You're gonna have to now. You're gonna be committed.
I know, right? So much stuff, But
Better be a big gallery, Nick. A lot of tanks you got to build now.
But the thing is, that it's one of them. It's like when it comes to stuff like that, it's like a labor of love. You know, it's like weird because I was talking about a guy today to someone, and he works in a store, and he hasn't actually. It's a bit like me. He doesn't have his own personal tank. And I was saying to him, the thing is with this guy though is the store tanks are his tank, like his hobby tank. So he's so protective over his coral bay and the fish systems and all that. He's meticulous with everything because it's almost like they're his tanks, even though they sell the corals from them. He looks after them like you would your own tank at home, and I think it's like a labor of love. So for me, it's a very similar thing. Although it's work to produce all these tanks and stuff that I want to do, it'll be a labor of love because finally I've got somewhere to display these tanks that are either still in my head or on paper or on files designed, just not built. So yeah, it will really be fun.
Guess you still have to maintain them life and it's the only downfall of
but I think it'll be really good fun to bring them to life though and see what people make of them.
It really would.
That'll be really fun, and just see if it inspires some of the more the mainstream manufacturers that mass produce the tanks, like Fluval again. You know, I admire Fluval for pushing the boundaries a little bit with some of the tanks that they've launched, like the Edge. I can't remember did they call the curved one.
Oh yeah, I know the curved front one. That's kind of funky too. One of my buddies has one, whatever it's called.
It's like Fluval, I think, as a company have done really well because they launched the Evo, which has been a really popular tank. You know, is it the Spec as well, the little nano with the thin light on top? That was a really nice design.
Fluval Flex is the curved front.
Yeah, so you know, big kudos to Fluval for doing that, not just following the trend, but actually like trying to set a trend and working outside of
actually
of that
like
as well.
the Spec V, the Edge. They've done a lot of cool ones. I actually think about it.
The one I really wanted them to make, which I know they talked about, but I don't know if I'll have to check if they actually did launch it because I met with Paul Trott, who's one of the UK guys at Fluval, because Fluval, the actual factory Fluval is only about 15 minutes, 20 minutes from where I live.
Oh, that's
so
cool.
Every now and again I'll go and see Paul there, and they were talking about launching the Fluval Edge as a bigger tank, like a 3-foot tank, 4-foot size tank.
I saw the concept for that and I actually wanted one, and it never came to life.
Yeah, exactly right. I know there was another in the UK trade exhibition. There was another company that I won't say copied it, but basically did a big version of the Fluval before Fluval did. But again, didn't come to. I think they retailed it for a very short period of time and then had issues with it, so pulled it as a product. And I don't know whether there's some issues for Fluval in launching as a product, or if they have indeed launched it. I don't know. I have to check. But I wish they would if they haven't, because that'd be a really nice tank.
A 3-foot
version
your friend,
would be awesome. You, right, with your friend. I wish he'd done that concept with your friend's tank. That would have been awesome.
Yeah, no, it would be. Huh, I like it. So you can look top down, like everything. You never know.
What comments are we getting in the chat? Because I can't read the chat and talk at the same time. So apologies if anyone's asking any questions or.
They're talking about different tank ideas. A couple of them were talking about they'd love a big L-shaped tank, which would be kind of funky. I've seen a couple done.
I actually want to do one. I'd like to do a big one. I'll be honest. Like, because of the space I've got here.
Would you do it as an inside corner or an outside corner for the main view?
An inside corner.
Yeah.
Just because of the way the space is here, where it would go, that would fit the way everything has to work. I do it as an inside corner, but I'd like to do something like, 12, 14 foot by 14
Yeah,
foot on each leg. So a huge, each leg is huge.
that'd be
I'd
awesome.
love to do that. And then maybe quite shallow. But then I don't know. It's one of those with big tanks. When you got that space, do you do big angels? Do you do big shoals of tangs, or do you go for huge shoals of tiny fish?
I like seeing lots of
So
tiny fish. It gives it more of a scale. We'll go extra crazy and do a drop
yeah.
off on one side of your L and let it go up and over. Or you can do an angle drop off.
Oh
Like
my
just go
God.
crazy with it.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think it's like for this one, I think they make it too busy. I'm not sure. Maybe
Yeah.
just a straight drop off on the end of each leg might be cool. I don't know. That could
Could
be
be cool.
cool. Yeah. I'll
There's
have
a
to have a look at that one.
there's potential. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that might be cool.
I have mixed opinions on if it's straight down or doing like a weird angle with it. But either way, it'd be kind of cool.
Mm, yeah. But yeah, I did think about that. So I'd like to do the floating tank, decent size overhang on one of those. The
Nick,
L shape.
it's
Yeah,
Mickey Boy who's talking about the L shape. They said to tell you.
yeah, yeah. Well, yeah, it was Mick that wanted to do that, but I don't know
Yeah.
whether he wanted me to mention him or not. But yeah, so Mick was talking about doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'd like to do that. A long overhanging floating tank. The arch, the rainbow tank, I definitely want to do. Some nice drop off upside down tanks I'd like to do. Just trying to think, there was
When
another
you
one.
say upside down tank, explain where the top is flat and you access it from underneath. That's like your offsetty ones.
Right. So yeah, the upside down tank, they're known as upside down or open bottom. So if you Google it or YouTube search it, if you put upside down open bottomed aquarium or tank, you'll see them. And basically, the principle is that you've got your normal sort of square rectangle tank, and then you have a vertical piece to
Okay.
it
Yeah.
that's sealed at the top, and
Yeah.
the vertical section is completely full of water. And then the horizontal bottom section can be open, because what you do is you put a slight baffle that drops on the front of the vertical, drops down to below the waterline. So then atmospheric pressure keeps that water up.
Yeah.
Now I've seen, what really inspired me was some of the ones I think were in Singapore, I think there were, where there was one, honestly, Dave, it was on the floor, up the wall, and the vertical section was like 5 foot, 6 foot high.
Yeah.
And the horizontal section was like a foot.
It's
And
all
the
about the
horizontal
vertical.
section is open. So when you're looking at it, you've got 5 feet of water being held up by a foot of water just by atmospheric pressure. So
just mess with you.
it just messes with your head, because it's like, how does that water stay up? Why doesn't it just come out? It just messes with your head. So that kind of stuff I really like, because it's like an optical illusion type stuff. So I really like that thing of people walking in and going, oh my God, how does that work? How does it not flooding all over the place? So
I
did
foresee
I
one
tell
of
you the
those
one
in
that
your.
I built?
Which one?
Did you see that? I bet I did send you pictures of one that I actually built.
The
And
cylinder one? Or let me go look.
yeah, that was an upside down one.
Yeah.
I think I sent you a picture where it's just the tank where it was like filled or pretty much filled with water. And they were water testing it when they took the picture.
I got a photo of
that
that
was
one.
that was an interesting one, because that was on show for High Door at one of the trade events, or probably about 8 years ago now, something silly like that. And I remember Paul, the distributor for High Door, is a good friend of mine. And I said to him, do you want anything special making for the trade event to put on the store? And he said, yeah, make us a tank, it'd be awesome. Yeah, we'll do something for us. And I said, well, I'll do it, but I want to do an upside down tank. And it was an actually upside down drop off.
Yeah.
So it was like, when you looked at it from the side, it looked like a lightning strike. So a drop off, there you go. So it was like that, but rectangle. And so yeah, basically the same as that, but rectangle. And
this one probably.
he was, yeah, you'll see it when you see it, you'll know.
Yeah, it's the L.
But when we came to do it and I sent him the pictures, he was
Hmm.
like, Nick, that's not going to work. And I went, what do you mean? He says, you're gonna flood the hall. Like I can't have that. You're gonna flood the hall. And I had to do him a video of showing it filled up to the top, to the brim,
Hmm.
to demonstrate it would hold the water and it wouldn't flood out. And then what he said was, yeah, but during the day, like with the evaporation of the water, that's the one. So
Yeah.
that's not completely full, but that back section completely fills up.
Hmm.
And he said, yeah, but when it evaporates, when the water drops to below the baffle level,
Hmm.
and you lose the vacuum with the air going in, you'll lose the vacuum and it'll all just pour out all over the floor. So
Oh,
I ended up
just
making
do
a
that little
video.
bit down just to do it, so it'll be fine. Yeah.
So what I did was I made a video and I basically put a siphon going in the main part of the tank, so it emptied out. And what happened was every time the water level on the horizontal part of the tank, the open tank,
Hmm.
dropped to below the baffle, it let air in, and it kind of went gloop. And then
Hmm.
what happened was as the air went in and then the water dropped its level,
Hmm.
obviously the horizontal section rose above the baffle, so then it held its place again.
Hmm.
So it didn't all just like gush out like he thought it would.
That's funny.
So yeah, so I had to do that video before he'd let me supply the tank, and even on the day, he was really nervous that this thing was just going to flood the whole hall. But it got a lot of attention on the day. It was really good. And
Nope.
Bebe from Hydor came over from Italy, and he
Hmm.
was really impressed with it as well. So yeah, I got quite a lot of kudos for that one,
Oh, that's
which
really
was
cool.
nice.
So I guess just
Yeah,
to fill it up the first time, you just have to suck the air out of it to make the water fill in.
yeah. Now here's one for you. So um, before I moved into this unit, I was in
Hmm.
another unit on this industrial estate, and I was getting that set up as a store.
Hmm.
And then the landlord asked me if I'd change units because somebody needed to be in that unit because it had a taller access door, the loading door.
Hmm.
So I agreed to do it because this is a much bigger premises, and they agreed to keep my rent at the same rate. So I was like, oh,
Hmm.
okay. But
Nice.
what I was doing at that time before he asked me to move was I was just gearing up to make a marine pond. So I wanted to
Hmm.
do an indoor marine pond with glass viewing panels,
Nice.
and I wanted to have a 2 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter upside down section
Hmm.
on the pond.
Yeah.
So we need to suck the air out of that in order to fill it.
Hmm.
And I posed a question to people and I said, so would I be able to suck the air out of this 2 meter by 1 meter by 1 meter tank in order for it to fill with water? And people were saying you wouldn't be able to do it because in effect you're lifting up to like when you get near the top up to like a ton and a half, a ton and three quarters, nearly 2 tons of water, and your lungs wouldn't be strong enough to suck out the air.
But the air inside would just be normal atmosphere pressure. You just have to get it out of the way. I think you could do it.
So do you think that the water isn't pulling against that, or is it pushing up against it?
I think it's pushing up against it, so you're just taking away that
Yeah,
compressed air. So I think it'd be easy to do, actually.
that's what I thought. So it's going to be interesting because I haven't tested the
Oh,
theory
I
yet
was
because I
waiting for
haven't
you to
done one
tell
that
us what
big.
happened.
I don't know. So because ones that I've seen that are quite big, they actually use like
Shot back or
a
something.
pump, like an air pump or something, yeah, to
Hmm.
suck the air out. I'm guessing it's because it's a lot of air and they don't want to stand there with a pipe for 2 hours. You know,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And the other thing is, every time you suck it out, the pipe you're sucking through, the water is pulling against that, right?
Hmm.
Because you have to put your finger over the end
Hmm.
to form the vacuum, to form the seal.
Yep.
So I think that's where people are saying that say like a ton and a half of water is pulling down on you against you sucking the air.
Well, was it very
That's
hard
what
on the
they're
tiny
saying.
tanks? The
It
small
wasn't on the
scale?
small tanks at all, no. But scaling it up to where you're trying to suck out the air that
Bring it,
basically
bring
a
a
ton and a
shop
half.
vac. Bring a
Yeah,
shop
that's the
vac.
thing. It's like how much pressure you're going to need to be able to extract it. Because yeah, I guess I can see what they're saying when that pipe is in,
Hmm.
because that's external.
Hmm.
The water's pulling against that sucking action of the pipe, right? So you sucking against that, you've got to overcome the weight of the water, surely.
Yeah. Either that or there's just like a
We'll
tiny little
see.
port you could fill in the
We'll
top, but that takes away from it. So, okay, question from Mickey Boy. What would be the stress points on an upside down tank? Would they be vacuum pressure or weight pressure against the glass?
That's the other interesting question. So, yeah, when you look at this, is all what's so weird about these tanks, this
Yeah.
particular designer tank, because
Mm-hmm.
it really does play with your head.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're thinking that it's gonna suck inwards, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, but when, like you were saying before, Dev, when it's full of water, it's like neutralized,
Yeah.
so it's not actually pulling in.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm not sure when it's like half air and half water, as the water rises, as you're sucking it, what the where the pressure works on that. And sometimes my head goes in loops trying to think about it. But I
Yeah.
have seen quite tall ones made out of just as if the regular tanks. They haven't used
Really?
like super reinforced glass or extra thick glass or anything like that.
Hmm.
So my thinking is that it's just as if it was a normal aquarium and the same rules apply in
Probably.
terms of, yeah, that's my thinking is that's what it is. But
Probably, because
might
either
be interesting.
way, you're going to have the water pushing outwards, right? It's going
Yeah,
down, yes, but it's also going outwards. And the downs is being
yeah,
held by itself. So I think it'd be the same as standard issue normal. But maybe you could get away with a bit less because you technically have the top sealed instead of open. So,
yeah. I think yeah, I think it's going to be like you said. It's going to
mm-hmm.
be just like a normal system.
Mm-hmm.
Especially once it's full, it's just going to be exerting the normal sort of forces.
Yeah, that'd be pretty good.
Um,
Okay, question now.
yeah,
On an upside down tank, have you ever tried to light one from the bottom and like upside down escape it just to mess with people?
that oh man. See, one of the trade events was when we had the Nordic Reef distributing in the UK from my unit here. So we
Mm-hmm.
had a fish house all decked out with fish and coral and all climate controlled. So that's going to be my fish house because it's already done.
Mm-hmm.
And the room next door, they had all the shelving up with all the dry goods, all the tanks, floor to ceiling, loads of products that were just shipped out of here all over the UK to all the stores in the UK.
Mm-hmm.
And they were going to attend the trade event, and
Mm-hmm.
that's exactly what Dave Moore, who was working for Nordic at that time, a good friend of mine, wanted to do. He wanted to
Mm-hmm.
do an upside down tank where all the corals upside down, they lit it from underneath, and all
Mm-hmm.
of that. And then they ended up not attending the show in the
Oh,
end. It proved
dang.
to just be too expensive. Yeah, I mean it's really expensive, so it just proved too expensive to do the actual rental of the stall and all of that. So yeah, that's another one. That's another
That
one
would
that
be
which
interesting. I would like to see that done just
yeah,
for fun. Like, I know it's not practical for most people, but it would just be like an interesting concept to do.
yeah. I want you to do one, Dev. That'd be really interesting. I tell you what, I gave a concept idea to a guy called Yuri,
Mm-hmm.
who, if anybody in the chat are into freshwater planted aquascapes, they might know this guy. His name's Yuri, and he's in Germany, and is a very prolific competition aquascaper, and he's a really talented guy. And I sent him some cabinets over for a book that he was writing on a guide to aquascaping.
Mm-hmm.
And I sent him some cabinets over. So I was chatting to him quite a bit at that time. And he was just about to enter a competition. And he was saying, oh, I'm thinking about, doing something a little bit different and all this. And I said to him, why don't you do an upside down tank? And he was sponsored by Denela. And I said, well, all you need is to get a Denela cube and then get somebody to make you a thin tray,
Mm-hmm.
glass tray, and then have the cube sat in it, do all your scape and everything,
Mm-hmm.
and then sit your cube upside down
Yeah.
and just fill the tray with like moss and rock and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and then just like if you moss and your rock and everything, I say like an inch within this
Mm-hmm.
tray, just put like 2 centimeters water so that the water line is invisible within the tray,
Mm-hmm.
and then fill the tank with water,
Mm-hmm.
like we said, sucking out the air and fill, suck, fill. And then until the cube is completely full of water and it's upside down, then people will look at it and go, how the hell did you aquascape that? Because there's no way to get into it.
Yeah.
And it's full of water. How did you fill it? Because there's only this very thin tray underneath. And they can't even see the water line because of all the moss and the rock is all dry, as if there's no water in it. So they'll be like, how the hell did you do that? And
I like it.
he actually did it, but he chickened out on the upside down bit again because he thought, well, if the water evaporates during the show and it's only a thin tray,
Yeah.
all the water could just fall out. And it was a competition as well, so he wanted to win.
Okay.
And what was interesting, he didn't do it as an upside down, so he sat the cube right way up, so the top was open. But he still won.
Oh,
He
that's
still
cool.
won it. So that was really cool. But yeah, it was one of those where, Yuri, why didn't you do upside down? It would have been amazing.
That'd be awesome. Okay, so
So
here a couple questions in the chat. I don't know if you know this, but would acros grow towards the light? If you mounted them upside down, would they and put lighted from the bottom? Do you think they would grow downwards?
oh, that's a good question. I'm not
I
sure,
know.
to
I
be
don't know.
honest.
I don't know either.
I seem to remember. I have to look again, but I seem to remember either a photo or a video of divers going through I think it was like a cave or an opening, and I'm sure there was coral over the top lip coming down, and I can't remember if it, like fungi, like kind of grows and then goes flat.
Sideways? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if it was doing that. I'd have to look, but the thing is that was like a cave as well, so it might have been coming down then going out towards the light of the cave. Yeah, that was a really interesting image for me because I've only ever done one of these. Have you heard of? I think they call it lightscaping or shadowscaping. A while ago.
Or the shadow makes the photo on the wall? Well, there's like a light source on like a piece of wood or something, and there's like the scene on the wall from like the shadow of it.
No, what it is, it was really popular a while ago, but I haven't really seen much of it recently, in recent times. But what they used to do was they'd put like an opaque piece of plastic or screen behind the tank, and then they use cardboard silhouettes of like rock to imitate rock.
Yeah.
And then they put a light behind it, so it made it as if the back of your tank wasn't the back of your tank, that it had more depth. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
I know what you're saying.
that was something they used to do like quite a lot, especially over in the States. I saw it a lot in the States years ago. I haven't seen it recently, like I said, but in the States they did it quite a lot. So I saw that and I thought, you know what? We don't have any printed backgrounds. Like when you first get your first aquarium, you get this printed background, and it's like plants or rocks, and you put it on the back of your tank.
Yep.
And they always look false, and you can kind of see when you look through your tank, they look false, and that's why a lot like the advanced people don't kind of use them.
Yeah.
And I thought, but what if we did one? So we made it look real, like it had real depth, so that the formation of the picture of the rockwork kind of near the front was in focus, but then it gave you an illusion of depth as
hazes.
So the perception of it went out of focus towards the middle. So it gave you that perception of depth. So I did one, and a guy asked me for it. So we did it and produced it on this tank. And what he did was he aquascaped the back of the tank in line with the way the photo had been made, so it almost looked seamless. And it actually looked really good. It looked like it kind of went off into like a real kind of depth of ocean. And that was quite impressive, actually, when he did it. It looked really good.
Nice.
But we only ever did one of those. So that might be something to do as well.
Well, I have seen some with the frosted where they backlight with like an LED or something, and it kind of gives like a blue glow in the back, which can look kind of cool.
Yeah, I think they call them like, I think in lighting graphics you call them shadow boxes. And I think it was, if you Google something like shadow box for aquarium or shadow box reef, you might find it. But it was something that was quite popular years ago. But I haven't seen hobbyists do it for quite a long time, actually.
Yep. Completely off topic question, but Jess was asking what is the highest phosphates you tolerate for your tank. Quick sidebar on this one. Phosphates is
Ooh.
kind of in a ratio with nitrates. So she said your nitrates were 3 to 5. So you want your phosphate actually pretty low to kind of keep that balance with it. So yeah, someone was saying 0.3 to 0.7. I'd say, yeah, 0.3, 0.4. You wouldn't want to go super high unless you're raise your nitrates a little bit. So 5 to 10 nitrates, 0.3 to 0.9 phosphates. I wouldn't really go over much over that to kind of keep that somewhat in ratio.
It's like Richard Ross. I remember we had him on the bubbling debate, right?
Yeah.
And I remember watching him talk about his tank, and he has his nitrates and phosphates are really high, but because the ratio is okay, he has no adverse effects. And he broadcast feeds. So he believes in broadcast feeding, so that's one of the reasons why his nitrates and phosphates are so high. And that comes up every now and again in talk and stuff. Is people say to keep your nitrates at between 2 and 5, and your phosphates 0.2, 0.3. And then you'll get somebody who says, well, I've got nitrates of like 50 and phosphates of like 3, and my tank's really healthy, my corals are great. So it is one of those things to really kind of understand, because it can be a bit mind-boggling. That the kind of like spoken rule is keep them between 2 and 5, your nitrates, and then you'll see people who say, oh, I've got 50 and everything's fine.
Well, yeah, it is a ratio, right? And you
Yeah.
kind of need to balance your lights with your nutrients, and it's just keeping the balance at the end of the day. It can be high, it can be low, and the other thing is too stability, right? Like if your tank is used to high, that's what your corals are used to, right? You don't want to drop it crazy fast, because then you'll just annoy them. Bad things happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I use phosphates to feed my bryopsis. Not sure how that makes sense. Don't feed bryopsis. You don't want bryopsis. starve those babies out.
Maybe he likes it. He might
Maybe.
like it.
That's what you're into. No, that's good. All right, Nick, I think it's like 1 something in the morning for you, isn't it? All right. I won't keep you too late, because I know it's really late for you, but I do appreciate the random chat about kind of hopefully inspiring some interesting aquarium designs. And I don't know, hopefully some you guys watching get inspired on your next build to do something a little outside the box and do something cool.
Yeah, I think that'd be good. Like, I think, for me as well, Dave, if you've been in the hobby a while and you've had 2 foot, 3 foot, 4 foot, 8 foot tanks, and you want to just try something different, think of a tank design that might challenge you a little bit, like we did with the guy down in London. It was only a 2 foot cube, but it ended up being a huge challenge for him, and he got a lot of notability for it, because like I say, at the time when it was done, there weren't any drop-offs around. And when people saw it, they were like, oh wow, that's so cool, oh, that's epic. So tanks don't always have to be big, to be inspirational at all. I think I told you one time, didn't I, Dev, that one of my favorite tanks I've seen was in a store, and it was only, I think, a 3x2 size tank, and it didn't have any SPS in it or anything. It was basically pulsing xenia with a couple of pairs of clownfish, but just the movement of the polyps, the pulsing xenia, just looked absolutely gorgeous. And that's when that struck me, when I was like, wow, we don't have to have mixed reef, we don't have to have SPS for something to look absolutely beautiful. That was stunning.
One day I'll try pulsing xenia. I like
Honestly,
it.
Dave,
I've been scared. I just never put it in my tank. I'm like, I'll take over.
Have you not got a small nano going at the moment?
No. Well, 34 gallons.
That's what I love. That's what I love about nanos is you can do something with it, experiment with it, and then run it and go, oh yeah, I've got it, and that looks cool. And then you've done it, and then you can just shut it down, empty it out, and do something else, because it's such small water volume and it's so easy to maintain, especially if you're running a stable main system, because you can water change through that. And you can do so much with them. So yeah, I'd get a small nano. I will do the upside down one. I'll challenge you to that. That'll be a small one, so we'll talk about that. I think that'll be awesome.
I just have too many tanks on the go. That's pretty much what it comes down to. I'm already debating if I can consolidate them.
Run it for a month. photograph
Yeah.
it, film it, and close it down. That's all you have
Maybe.
to do. Just do it. Just do it so you've done
We'll
it.
see. We'll see. I got a spare tank laying around. There's. I'm already toying with the idea of just doing one big frag tank in here instead of these multiple tanks. But we'll see.
Okay.
That's fun. All right, Nick. I'm gonna
No
call
worries.
or let you go to bed because I know it's like 1:30 in the morning for you.
Yeah, no
Thank you
worries.
for
No
coming
worries.
on the live
No,
stream
thanks for
from the
having
other
us.
side of the
No, I always
world.
enjoy it.
Yep.
No, you're welcome.
All right, guys. Whoever's
All
watching,
right.
thanks for hanging out, guys. If you guys enjoyed it, hit that thumbs up button, and I'll see you guys in next week's stream. Thanks so much, Nick.
Take care, everybody.